r/MaliciousCompliance grandfather cut my pay in half, so I exposed him to the family. The family reunion invitation sat on my dorm desk like a loaded gun. In 2 weeks, I'd be sitting across from Grandpa Joe at the annual Hoffman family barbecue, listening to him tell everyone how he's grooming me to take over the business and teaching me the value of hard work. The same grandfather who just cut my pay from $8 an hour to $4 an hour because I had the audacity to ask for minimum wage. I stared at the crumpled pay stub in my hand. $4 an hour. In 2023. For backbreaking construction work under the scorching summer sun. The math was brutal, 40 hours a week for the past 3 months, and I'd barely scraped together enough to cover my textbooks, let alone help with tuition like I'd promised my parents. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Derek. Can't wait to see you at the reunion. Grandpa keeps bragging about how lucky you are to learn from him. Says he's practically handing you the keys to the kingdom, faced with tears of joy. The keys to the kingdom. That's rich. I thought back to yesterday's conversation with Grandpa Joe in his cluttered office trailer. I'd rehearsed my request for weeks, keeping it reasonable and respectful. Just asked for minimum wage, $12 an hour, explaining how the extra money would help with my rising tuition costs. I'd even prepared a little speech about my dedication to the family business and how much I'd learned over the past 2 summers. His response. A lecture about entitlement and a pay cut that left me speechless. You think you deserve more money for the same work, he'd said, leaning back in his creaky chair with that condescending smile I'd grown to hate. Maybe you need to learn some gratitude first. $4 an hour should remind you that this isn't about the money, it's about family. It's about legacy. Legacy. The word tasted bitter now. What legacy was there in exploiting your own grandchild? What family values were represented in paying someone half the federal minimum wage to haul concrete blocks in 95-degree heat? The worst part wasn't even the money, it was the lies. At every family gathering, Grandpa Joe painted himself as my generous mentor, the wise patriarch investing in the next generation. Everyone ate it up. Uncle Mike always made jokes about how I'd struck gold, working for family instead of some soul-crushing corporate job. Aunt Linda constantly praised Grandpa's dedication to keeping the business in the family. Even my own parents beamed with pride when he'd go on about my work ethic and bright future. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew I was working for less than half of what he paid his other laborers, guys he'd complain about constantly, calling them lazy and unreliable while simultaneously paying them more than twice my wage. None of them knew about the unpaid overtime, the dangerous shortcuts, or the way he'd berate me in front of other workers for mistakes that weren't even mine. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder I'd been building all summer. Pay stubs dating back 2 years. Photos of the employee bulletin board showing the, now hiring, $15 per hour, signs he'd post while paying me scraps. Screenshots of our text conversations where he'd guilt-trip me about family loyalty whenever I questioned anything. The evidence was damning, and I had 2 weeks to decide what to do with it. The reunion would have 43 family members in attendance. 43 people who thought they knew exactly who Grandpa Joe was, and exactly how lucky I was to be his chosen successor. Maybe it was time they learned the truth. The next morning, I made a mistake that changed everything. I was grabbing coffee in the student union when I ran into my mom's sister, Aunt Carol. She was visiting campus for some alumni event, and her face lit up when she spotted me across the crowded cafe. There's my favorite nephew, she called out, weaving between tables to reach me. I was just thinking about you. Your grandfather called me yesterday, he's so excited about the reunion. Says he has some big announcement about you and the business. My stomach dropped. Big announcement. Oh, don't play coy with me, she laughed, nudging my arm. Joe's been hinting for months that he's ready to make it official. Partnership papers, maybe even putting your name on the company. He's so proud of how you've embraced the family legacy. Partnership papers. My name on the company. The coffee turned to acid in my mouth. Aunt Carol, can I ask you something? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. What do you think Grandpa pays me? Her eyebrows shot up. Pays you? Honey, your family. You're learning a trade, building your future. That's worth more than any paycheck. She paused, studying my expression. Although, knowing your grandfather's generosity, I'm sure he takes good care of you. Why? Is everything okay? I should have deflected. Should have made some excuse and changed the subject. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed her the latest pay stub. The color drained from her face as she stared at the screen. $4 an hour. That has to be a mistake. It's not a mistake. He cut it in half last week because I asked for minimum wage. Aunt Carol's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to find words that didn't exist. Finally, she grabbed my arm and pulled me toward a corner table, away from other students. David, this is... She shook her head. There has to be an explanation. Your grandfather would never. I mean, he talks about you like you're his pride and joy. He talks about me like I'm his charity case, I corrected. And apparently, I'm about to become his business partner without even knowing it. The conversation spiraled from there. Aunt Carol, bless her heart, couldn't reconcile the man who'd helped pay for her daughter's wedding with someone who would exploit his own grandson. She kept offering explanations, maybe it was a clerical error, maybe there were hidden benefits I wasn't seeing, maybe Grandpa was testing my character. By the time we parted ways, I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. Not doubt about Grandpa Joe, doubt about me. That evening, my phone rang. Mom's number. David, Carol called me with some concerning questions about your job. She seemed to think you're unhappy with Grandpa Joe's mentorship. Mentorship. There was that word again, dressed up to make exploitation sound noble. Mom, did you know he pays me $4 an hour? Silence. Then, honey, you know this isn't about the money. Grandpa is giving you something much more valuable, experience, connections, a future in the family business. Some people would kill for that opportunity. Some people wouldn't have to. They'd get paid fairly for it. David. Her voice carried that warning tone I remembered from childhood. Your grandfather has done so much for this family. For you. Don't let money poison something beautiful. After she hung up, I sat in my dorm room staring at the reunion invitation again. But now everything had changed. Word was spreading through the family grapevine. Questions were being asked. And somewhere in his house across town, Grandpa Joe was probably getting phone calls too. The family reunion was still 2 weeks away, but the battle lines were already being drawn. And I was starting to realize I might be fighting this war alone. The phone calls started the next day. First it was Uncle Mike, Grandpa's oldest son, catching me between classes with a voice that could cut glass. "David, we need to talk. Your mom mentioned you're having some concerns about working with Dad." I ducked into an empty classroom, my heart already racing. "Uncle Mike, Look, kid, I get it. When I was your age, I thought I knew everything too. But spreading rumors about family? That's crossing a line. Rumors. That's what my pay stubs had become, rumors. I'm not spreading anything." Aunt Carol asked me a direct question and I answered it honestly. Honestly? His laugh was sharp and humorless. "You showed her some numbers without context. Do you have any idea what Dad has invested in you? The connections he's made? The doors he's opened? You can't put a price tag on that kind of mentorship." There it was again. Mentorship. The magic word that supposedly transformed exploitation into generosity. "Uncle Mike, he pays his regular laborers $15 an hour. I make 4. How is that mentorship?" "Because you're not a regular laborer." His voice rose, and I could hear the frustration bleeding through. "You're being groomed for ownership, David. Dad isn't just teaching you to swing a hammer, he's showing you every aspect of the business. The finances, the client relationships, the long-term planning. Do you think Harvard Business School would pay you to attend?" The comparison was so absurd I almost laughed. Harvard Business School doesn't make their students haul concrete in 100-degree weather for 40 hours a week. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Uncle Mike spoke again, his tone had shifted, colder, more calculated. "David, Dad's planning something special for the reunion. Something that could set up your entire future. Don't sabotage that over a few dollars an hour." After he hung up, I slumped against the classroom wall. A few dollars an hour. Like the difference between poverty wages and actual compensation was just pocket change. My phone buzzed with a text from Cousin Derek. "Dude, what's this drama about you and Grandpa? Mom's freaking out." Then Aunt Linda, "Honey, family disputes should stay in the family. Let's talk before things get out of hand." By evening, I'd received 6 calls and 12 messages. The family network was in overdrive, and the message was crystal clear: fall in line, shut up, and be grateful. But the strangest call came just before midnight. Grandpa Joe himself. "David." His voice was different, not the gruff authority I was used to, but something softer. Almost wounded. "I hear you've been talking to family about our business arrangement. Grandpa, I want you to know, son, that everything I've done has been for your benefit. Every lesson, every challenge, every opportunity to prove yourself. I see great things in your future." The sincerity in his voice threw me off balance. This wasn't the man who'd cut my pay in half with a condescending smile. This was someone who sounded genuinely hurt. "I've been planning something for the reunion," he continued. "Something I think you'll be very happy about. But it requires trust, David. Mutual trust and respect." "What kind of something?" "The kind of something that makes all these growing pains worthwhile. The kind of future your parents dreamed of when they first brought you to my job sites as a little boy." I closed my eyes, remembering those days. How proud I'd been in my miniature hard hat, following Grandpa around like he was some kind of superhero. How excited I'd been to finally join his crew, to become part of the legacy. "Give me until the reunion," he said quietly. "Before you do anything you might regret, give me a chance to show you the bigger picture." The line went dead, leaving me more confused than ever. 2 weeks suddenly felt like no time at all. The next few days passed in a haze of family politics and mounting pressure. Every conversation felt loaded, every text message carried hidden meaning. I found myself analyzing my grandfather's late-night call obsessively. Was he genuinely trying to make things right, or was this just another manipulation tactic? My answer came Thursday afternoon when I showed up to work and found a brand new guy on the crew. "You must be David," he said, extending a calloused hand. "I'm Marcus. Just started this week." I shook his hand, noting the confidence in his grip, the way he carried himself like someone who knew his worth. "What's Joe paying you to start?" 18 an hour, Marcus replied without hesitation. "Not bad for construction work these days. Your grandfather seems like a fair boss. $18 an hour. For a brand new employee. While I was still making 4. The irony hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Here I was, supposedly the chosen heir to this construction empire, making less than a quarter of what a complete stranger earned on day one. The bigger picture Grandpa Joe wanted me to see was becoming crystal clear, and it wasn't pretty. That afternoon, I watched Marcus work alongside the other crew members, all of them earning between $15 and $18 an hour. They joked around during breaks, complained about the heat, took their time with difficult tasks. Meanwhile, I was expected to work twice as hard for a fraction of the pay, all while being grateful for the opportunity. When Grandpa Joe made his rounds, I saw him differently. The way he'd clap Marcus on the shoulder and tell him he was doing great work. The way he'd slip the guys an extra 20 when they stayed late. The way his whole demeanor changed when he interacted with employees who had the power to quit and work somewhere else. With me, there was no performance. No need to maintain goodwill or job satisfaction. I was family, which apparently meant I could be taken advantage of indefinitely. That evening, I called my dad for the first time since this whole mess started. "David, your mother told me you're having some concerns about working with Grandpa Joe." "Dad, did you know what he's paying me?" A long pause. "Son, some opportunities are about more than immediate compensation." "That's not what I asked." Another pause, longer this time. "Your grandfather mentioned he might be starting you at a lower wage to teach you humility." I thought that sounded reasonable. $4 an hour reasonable? I heard him suck in a breath. $4. David, that's... His voice trailed off. Less than federal minimum wage. Less than what prisoners make in some states. Less than what he pays guys who started this week. There has to be more to the story. There is more to the story, Dad. The story is that he's been exploiting me for 2 years while everyone in the family thinks he's being generous. Don't use that word. Exploiting. He's your grandfather. Being related to someone doesn't give them the right to cheat you. The conversation ended badly, with Dad suggesting I was being influenced by college liberals and needed to remember where I came from. But I caught something in his voice, a crack in the certainty, a hint that maybe, just maybe, $4 an hour was hard to defend even for the most loyal family member. Friday brought another complication. I arrived at the job site to find Grandpa Joe waiting for me with paperwork in his hands. David, I want you to sign these. I scanned the documents quickly. Non-disclosure agreements. Clauses about not discussing company business with outside parties. Language about protecting trade secrets and maintaining family confidentiality. What is this? Protection, he said simply. For both of us. Sign these, and we can move forward with the announcement I mentioned. The reunion was 8 days away. My folder of evidence sat in my dorm room like a ticking bomb. And now Grandpa Joe was asking me to legally bind myself to silence. The choice was becoming inevitable. I stared at the non-disclosure agreement in my hands, the legal language blurring together as my heart pounded. The job site buzzed with activity around us. Marcus was already hauling lumber with 2 other guys, earning more in 1 hour than I made in 4. I need time to think about this, I said, folding the papers. Grandpa Joe's jaw tightened. Time to think. David, this is a formality. Standard business practice. Unless you're planning to do something that would hurt the family. The way he said, hurt the family, made it clear he knew exactly what I'd been considering. Someone had told him about my folder, my evidence, my plans for the reunion. I'll give you my answer Monday, I said, stuffing the papers into my back pocket. His eyes narrowed. The reunion is next weekend. I need this handled before then. I spent that weekend in my dorm room, feeling like a prisoner in my own life. Every family member I'd once trusted felt like a potential spy now. Derek texted asking if I wanted to grab dinner, but I couldn't shake the feeling he was fishing for information. Aunt Carol called twice, I let it go to voicemail both times. Sunday evening brought an unexpected visitor. My older brother Jason knocked on my door, which was strange since he lived 3 hours away and hadn't mentioned any plans to visit. Hey little brother, he said, but his usual easy grin looked forced. Thought I'd swing by campus, see how you're doing. Let me guess, Mom asked you to come. Jason had the decency to look sheepish. She's worried about you. Says you're stirring up drama with Grandpa Joe over some misunderstanding about your summer job. Misunderstanding. I shook my head. Jason, look at this. I showed him my latest pay stub. He studied it for a long moment, his expression growing serious. $4 an hour. That can't be right. It's right. And before last week, it was 8. Still below minimum wage, but I didn't complain because family, right? Jason sank into my desk chair, running a hand through his hair. David, I had no idea. When Grandpa talks about your job, he makes it sound like you're basically his business partner already. That's the problem. Everyone thinks I'm getting this amazing opportunity while I'm actually getting screwed. So what are you planning to do? I hesitated. Jason was the one family member I'd always trusted completely, but the past week had taught me that family loyalty ran in complicated directions. I'm thinking about telling everyone the truth at the reunion. Jesus, David. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. That would be like dropping a nuclear bomb in the middle of the family barbecue. Maybe the family needs a wake-up call. Or maybe you need to think about the consequences. Grandpa Joe isn't just some random boss you can expose and walk away from. He's family. This will follow you forever. That night, after Jason left, I called my roommate Matt who was home for the summer. I needed perspective from someone outside the family bubble. Dude, this is insane, Matt said after I explained the situation. $4 an hour is literally illegal. You could report him to the Department of Labor. It's not about the government getting involved. It's about my family understanding who he really is. But what if they don't care? What if they decide you're the problem for bringing it up? That question kept me awake until dawn. Monday morning, I drove to the job site with the unsigned papers in my passenger seat. Grandpa Joe was waiting in his trailer, drumming his fingers on the desk. Well, I placed the unsigned documents in front of him. I'm not signing these. His face went through several emotions, surprise, disappointment, and finally, cold calculation. I see. Then I guess we understand each other. I guess we do. The reunion was 5 days away, and the battle lines were finally drawn. The rest of that week felt like psychological warfare. Tuesday morning, I arrived at the job site to find my time card missing from the rack. When I asked Grandpa Joe about it, he barely looked up from his paperwork. Didn't think you'd be coming in anymore, he said with calculated indifference. Thought you might be too busy with other priorities. I never said I was quitting. No, but you made your position clear. Hard to maintain a working relationship without trust. The message was obvious, fall in line or lose your job entirely. It was a power play designed to force my hand, but it backfired spectacularly. Instead of panicking about losing income, I felt something close to relief. No more pretending this was normal. No more 8-hour days of cognitive dissonance. Fine, I said. I'll collect my final paycheck on Friday. For the first time in our conversation, Grandpa Joe looked genuinely surprised. Whatever reaction he'd expected, casual acceptance wasn't it. Wednesday brought a surprise visit from my parents. They drove up from home without warning, cornering me as I left my afternoon economics class. David, we need to talk, Mom said, her face tight with stress. This situation with your grandfather has gone too far. We found a quiet spot on campus, and Dad launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech about family loyalty and burning bridges. But I could see the cracks in their united front. Dad kept glancing at Mom when she wasn't looking, and she kept fidgeting with her wedding ring, a nervous habit from my childhood. Your grandfather called us last night, Mom said finally. He's very hurt by your accusations. My accusations? Mom, I showed you documented evidence. Numbers on a pay stub don't tell the whole story, Dad interjected, but his voice lacked conviction. What story would make $4 an hour acceptable? The question hung in the air between us. I watched my parents struggle with it, seeing them try to reconcile their image of Grandpa Joe with the reality of what he'd done to their son. He mentioned he was planning to announce a partnership at the reunion, Mom said quietly. Maybe he was keeping your wages low because he was planning something bigger. A partnership in a business where the owner thinks it's okay to pay family members slave wages? That's supposed to be a reward. Thursday evening, I got a call from someone I hadn't expected, my grandmother. David, honey, I heard there's been some confusion about your job with Grandpa. Confusion. Even Grandma was using euphemisms. Hi, Grandma. There's no confusion. Just facts that some people don't want to acknowledge. Your grandfather loves you very much. Sometimes his way of showing it might seem harsh, but everything he does comes from a place of caring. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of 4 generations of family mythology pressing down on me. How long had they all been making excuses for him? How many other people had he taken advantage of while everyone looked the other way? Grandma, if someone you loved was paying you $4 an hour for construction work, would you call that caring? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Come to the reunion, she said finally. Let him say what he wants to say before you make any decisions you can't take back. Friday morning, I drove to Grandpa Joe's office one last time to collect my final paycheck. The envelope was waiting on his secretary's desk with my name written in his familiar scrawl. No goodbye, no final conversation, just a thin envelope containing $87 for my last week of work. I sat in my car outside his office, staring at the check and doing math in my head. In 3 days, I'd be sitting across from him at the family reunion, listening to him announce whatever partnership deal he thought would buy my silence. The question was, would I let him? My phone buzzed with a text from Derek, can't wait for tomorrow. Grandpa's been mysterious about his big announcement all week. Mom thinks he's finally going to make you a full business partner. I stared at the message, then at my final paycheck, then at the folder of evidence sitting in my passenger seat. 24 hours until the reunion. Time to decide which version of myself I wanted to be. The morning of the reunion, I woke up to 17 missed calls. My phone had been buzzing since 6 a.m., but I turned off the ringer and tried to sleep through the chaos. Fat chance. The voicemail notifications kept piling up like digital landmines, each one probably another family member trying to talk me out of whatever they thought I was planning. I was getting dressed when my door rattled with aggressive knocking. Through the peephole, I saw Uncle Mike's face, red with frustration and morning heat. David. Open up. We need to talk right now. I considered pretending I wasn't home, but his rental car was parked right next to mine. No escape route. Uncle Mike, I said, opening the door cautiously. You're up early. Cut the crap. He pushed past me into my dorm room, his eyes immediately scanning for something. Where is it? Where's what? Whatever evidence you think you have. The paperwork you've been collecting. My stomach dropped. The folder was sitting on my desk in plain sight, and Uncle Mike spotted it immediately. He lunged for it, but I was faster. That's my property, I said, clutching the folder against my chest. That's family business that you're planning to weaponize. His face was angrier than I'd ever seen it. David, I'm not leaving here without those documents. You can't just take my stuff. Watch me. He stepped closer, and for a moment I thought he might actually try to physically wrestle the folder away from me. Your grandfather called an emergency family meeting for this morning. Before the reunion. He knows what you're planning. An emergency meeting. 10 a.m. at his house. All the adults. To discuss how to handle this situation. The way he said situation made it clear that I was the problem being discussed, not Grandpa Joe's behavior. Am I invited to this meeting about me? Uncle Mike's expression softened slightly. David, you're 19 years old. You don't understand the full picture here. Dad built this business from nothing. He's provided for this entire family for 40 years. If you blow this up over some payroll misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? The word exploded out of me. He's paying me less than minimum wage while bragging to everyone about how generous he is. And in 3 hours, he was going to offer you a 20% stake in the company. Uncle Mike's voice cracked with frustration. 20%, David. Of a business worth over $2 million. But that's contingent on family loyalty. The number hit me like a physical blow. 20% of $2 million. $400,000 worth of business ownership. That's not possible. The partnership papers were drawn up last week. Your name on the company letterhead, profit sharing, decision-making authority. Everything you could want. Uncle Mike ran his hands through his hair. But not if you humiliate him in front of the entire family first. I sank onto my bed, still clutching the folder. $400,000. A real stake in the family business. Everything I thought I wanted. Why didn't he just tell me? Because he wanted it to be a surprise. Because he thought you understood that this was all leading somewhere. Uncle Mike's voice softened. David, you're about to throw away your entire future over a few months of low wages. My phone rang. Grandpa Joe's number. Don't answer that, Uncle Mike said quickly. But I was already swiping to accept the call. David. Grandpa Joe's voice was calm, controlled. I hear Mike found you. Grandpa, Uncle Mike says you were planning to. The meeting starts in an hour, he interrupted. You can come and we can discuss this as a family, or you can show up to the reunion later and find out just how quickly someone can be disinherited. The line went dead. Uncle Mike was staring at me with a mixture of pity and frustration. 1 hour, David. Choose wisely. I stared at my phone's black screen, Uncle Mike's ultimatum echoing in my head. 1 hour to decide between family loyalty and personal integrity. $400,000 in partnership value versus the principle of not being exploited. I need to shower and think, I said finally. Uncle Mike checked his watch. 47 minutes, David. Don't be stupid about this. After he left, I sat on my bed holding the folder that had caused so much chaos. Inside were months of documentation, pay stubs, photos, text messages, all proving that my grandfather had been systematically underpaying me while lying to the family about his generosity. But now that evidence felt different. Less like proof of wrongdoing and more like a nuclear weapon pointed at my own future. 20% ownership. Partnership papers already drawn up. My name on company letterhead. I pulled out my laptop and started researching Hoffman Construction's business filings. Uncle Mike hadn't been lying about the company's value. Recent contracts showed they were pulling in serious revenue. 20% of that would set me up for life. But as I scrolled through the financial documents, something else caught my attention. Employee payroll records from last year, publicly filed with the state. Every worker's wages were listed, and the pattern was damning. Hoffman Construction had a history of wage violations, multiple complaints filed with the Department of Labor, settlements paid out quietly, repeat offenses. I wasn't Grandpa Joe's first victim. I was just his most convenient one. My hands shook as I printed out the state records. This wasn't about teaching me humility or building character. This was a pattern of exploitation that went back years, and being family had just made me an easier target. The partnership offer suddenly looked different too. How do you give someone 20% of a business that might face federal investigation? How valuable is ownership in a company built on systematic wage theft? My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Dude, emergency family meeting this morning. What's going on? Mom won't tell me anything. Then another from Aunt Carol. David, honey, please just listen to what your grandfather has to say. Sometimes bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. 23 minutes until the meeting. I called my dad. David, thank God. Mike told us about the partnership offer. This is incredible news. Dad, did you know about Grandpa's other wage violations? The state has records going back 5 years. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? Department of Labor complaints. Settlements. He's been doing this to other employees for years. David, you're spiraling. Don't sabotage this opportunity by going down conspiracy rabbit holes. It's not a conspiracy if it's documented by the state government. Son, you have 15 minutes to get to that meeting and accept the most generous offer you'll ever receive. Don't throw your future away over paperwork you don't understand. After he hung up, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. They all knew. Maybe not the specific details, but they all knew Grandpa Joe cut corners and bent rules. They just never cared because it didn't affect them directly. Until now, when their silence was finally costing them something. 10 minutes until the meeting. I grabbed my car keys and the folder. But instead of driving toward Grandpa Joe's house, I pulled up the address for the nearest Department of Labor office. According to Google Maps, it would take 12 minutes to get there. The choice was becoming crystal clear. I could spend the next hour in a room full of family members trying to convince me that exploitation was actually opportunity. Or I could file a formal complaint and let federal investigators decide what Hoffman Construction was really worth. My phone rang one more time. Grandpa Joe again. This time, I didn't answer. I drove to Grandpa Joe's house after all. Not because I'd changed my mind about the partnership offer, but because I realized I needed to see this meeting with my own eyes. I needed to understand exactly how far my family would go to protect the lie. I parked across the street and sat in my car for 5 minutes, watching relatives arrive. Uncle Mike's rental car was already there, along with my parents' Honda and Aunt Linda's SUV. Through the living room window, I could see figures moving around, gesturing animatedly. My phone had been buzzing non-stop with increasingly frantic messages. Derek, where are you? Grandpa is pissed. Mom, David, please come inside. We're all waiting for you. Aunt Carol, sweetheart, don't do this to yourself. Think about your future. I turned off my phone and walked up to the front door. Before I could knock, it swung open. Grandpa Joe stood there in his best polo shirt, looking like he was dressed for a business presentation rather than a family crisis. David. I wasn't sure you'd come. Neither was I. He stepped aside to let me in, and I immediately felt the weight of 8 pairs of eyes watching my every move. The entire adult family was crammed into Grandpa's living room like some twisted intervention. Mom and Dad sat stiffly on the couch. Uncle Mike leaned against the fireplace mantel. Aunt Linda perched on the edge of an armchair while Aunt Carol hovered near the kitchen doorway. Well, Grandpa Joe said, closing the door behind me. Now that we're all here, let's discuss this situation like adults. Where are the partnership papers? I asked. Uncle Mike gestured toward the coffee table, where a neat stack of legal documents sat waiting. Even from across the room, I could see my name printed in bold letters on the first page. 20% ownership, Grandpa Joe said, settling into his recliner like a king addressing his court. Immediate profit sharing. Your name on every contract. A guaranteed inheritance of controlling interest when I retire. I picked up the papers and scanned them quickly. The financial terms were even better than Uncle Mike had described. Signing this would make me wealthy before my 21st birthday. This is contingent on what, exactly? Family loyalty, Dad said from the couch. Understanding that what's discussed within the family stays within the family. And the pay stubs in your car getting shredded, Uncle Mike added bluntly. I looked around the room at faces I'd known and trusted my entire life. Every single one of them was asking me to participate in a cover-up. Not just to stay quiet, but to actively help them maintain the lie. What about the other employees he's cheated? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Other employees? Mom's voice was carefully controlled. I pulled out my phone and showed them the state records I'd found. 5 years of wage violations. Multiple settlements. This isn't about me learning humility, this is a pattern. Aunt Linda was the first to crack. Joe, you said those complaints were dismissed. They were handled appropriately, Grandpa Joe replied, but his voice had lost some of its authority. Handled by paying settlements, I said. Which means admitting guilt. Which means protecting the business, Uncle Mike snapped. David, every construction company deals with disgruntled employees making frivolous claims. That's just the nature of the industry. So I'm a disgruntled employee now. The question hung in the air like a challenge. I watched my family members exchange glances, trying to figure out how to spin this new narrative where I wasn't the beloved grandson being groomed for success, but just another troublemaker threatening their patriarch. Sign the papers, David, Grandpa Joe said quietly. Sign them, and we can put this whole misunderstanding behind us. I looked down at the partnership agreement one more time. $400,000 in immediate equity. A guaranteed future. Everything I thought I wanted. But the signature line might as well have been written in blood. I set the partnership papers back on the coffee table without signing them. I need to understand something first, I said, looking directly at Grandpa Joe. If this partnership was always the plan, why didn't you just pay me fairly from the beginning? Why the poverty wages and the lectures about gratitude? Because I needed to know you had the character to stick with something difficult, he replied smoothly. Anyone can work hard when they're overpaid. It takes real dedication to push through when things are challenging. Challenging? The word came out sharper than I intended. You mean illegal? Federal minimum wage exists for a reason. Uncle Mike stepped forward. David, you're getting hung up on technicalities. Technicalities like labor laws. Like the bigger picture. His voice rose. Do you think Dad got rich by following every single government regulation to the letter? Do you think any successful business does? The admission hit the room like a bomb. Aunt Carol's face went pale. Mom's mouth fell open slightly. Even Dad looked uncomfortable with how blatantly Uncle Mike had just endorsed breaking federal law. Mike, Grandpa Joe said sharply, that's enough. But it was too late. The mask had slipped, and everyone had seen what was underneath. So this is normal for Hoffman Construction? I asked. Breaking labor laws is just standard operating procedure. This family has built something real, Grandpa Joe said, his voice hardening. Something that's provided good lives for dozens of people. If you want to destroy that over some bureaucratic nonsense about hourly wages. It's not bureaucratic nonsense. The words exploded out of me. It's my life. It's 20 hours a week of backbreaking work just to afford textbooks while you tell everyone how generous you're being. And now I'm offering you ownership, he shouted back. Real ownership, not just a paycheck. What more do you want? I want you to admit what you did was wrong. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked around the room at my family, people who taught me about honesty and integrity and doing the right thing, and watched them struggle with a simple request for accountability. Joe, Grandma's voice came from the kitchen doorway. I hadn't even noticed her come in. Maybe the boy has a point. Every head turned toward her. Grandma rarely spoke up during family conflicts, but when she did, people listened. Martha, stay out of this, Grandpa Joe warned. Stay out of what? My grandson asking for fair treatment. She moved into the living room, her cane tapping against the hardwood floor. Joe, I've been married to you for 52 years. I know when you're in the wrong. Grandma, Uncle Mike started. Hush. She waved him off and sat down next to my parents on the couch. David, show me those papers you mentioned. The state records. I handed her my phone, watching as she squinted at the screen. Her expression grew darker with each line she read. 5 years of this, Joe. 5 years of cheating workers, and you thought it was appropriate to do the same thing to our grandson? Those complaints were frivolous. Settlements aren't frivolous, Grandma said firmly. Settlements cost money. Real money. Which means real problems. The family dynamic shifted in that moment. Suddenly it wasn't 8 adults against one rebellious teenager. It was a family genuinely grappling with evidence they couldn't dismiss. The reunion starts in 2 hours, Aunt Linda said quietly. Everyone's going to expect the big announcement Joe's been promising. I looked at the unsigned partnership papers, then at my grandfather's face, then at my phone where 17 missed calls from various cousins were still waiting. What happens if I don't sign? I asked. Grandpa Joe's expression went cold. Then you're not family business material after all. The threat was clear. Sign the papers and stay quiet, or lose everything, not just the partnership, but my place in the family itself. My hands were shaking as I reached for the pen. I picked up the pen, feeling its weight like it was made of lead instead of plastic. The partnership papers sat in front of me, $400,000 worth of silence waiting for my signature. But as I leaned forward, my phone buzzed against my leg. A text notification. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen and saw Derek's name, but what I read made my blood freeze. Dude, just got to the reunion early to help set up. Why is there a reporter here asking questions about Hoffman Construction? Says someone called in a tip about wage violations. The room erupted in chaos. What? Uncle Mike lunged for my phone, but I pulled it away. David, what did you do? Mom's voice was sharp with panic. I didn't do anything. But even as I said it, a horrible realization was dawning. Someone else had seen my research. Someone else had access to those state records. My phone rang immediately. Derek calling. David, you need to get down here right now, his voice was urgent, barely controlled. There's a woman from the Herald asking Aunt Susan about Grandpa's business practices. She has documents. Official-looking stuff. Put her on speaker, Grandpa Joe commanded, his face gray. Derek's voice filled the room. She's talking to Uncle Pete now, asking about employee complaints and legal settlements. David, did you? I didn't call any reporter, I said, but my mind was racing. Who else knew about my investigation? The answer hit me like a truck. Matt. My roommate Matt, who I'd told everything to over the phone. Matt, whose girlfriend Sarah worked for the local newspaper. Matt, who'd said I should report Grandpa Joe to the Department of Labor. You told someone, Aunt Linda accused. You talked to someone outside the family. It doesn't matter who he told, Uncle Mike snapped. What matters is damage control. Joe, we need to get down there and what? Grandpa Joe's voice was dangerously quiet. Tell 43 family members that everything they've heard about David's job was a lie. Explain why there are state violations dating back 5 years. My phone buzzed with another text from Derek. Reporter just asked cousin Jenny if she knew you were making $4 per hour. Jenny told everyone within earshot. People are freaking out. Then another, Uncle Robert's wife is crying. Says she feels horrible for all the jokes about how lucky you are. And another, Grandpa, you need to get here now. This is getting ugly. The partnership papers suddenly seemed meaningless. The story was already out, spreading through the reunion like wildfire. In the next hour, every family member would know the truth about my wages, Grandpa Joe's violations, and the years of lies that had covered it all up. You planned this, Grandpa Joe said, staring at me with something approaching hatred. The whole innocent act, the folder of evidence, even coming here today. You planned to humiliate me. I swear I didn't contact any reporter. But you told someone who did. Uncle Mike was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. Jesus, David, do you have any idea what you've done? This isn't just about family drama anymore. This is about a business with 12 employees and their families. My phone rang again. This time it was Aunt Susan. David? Her voice was shaking. There's a reporter here who says Grandpa's been paying you illegally. Is that true? Because she's asking everyone about it and people are starting to take sides, Anne. In the background, I could hear raised voices, people arguing, someone crying. The Hoffman family reunion had officially become a war zone. And I was holding the smoking gun. I hung up on Aunt Susan and stared at my family members, who were all looking at me like I just burned down their house. We need to leave. Now. Grandpa Joe was already grabbing his keys. David, you're coming with us to explain to that reporter that this was all a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? The word felt absurd given everything that had just happened. Grandpa, I can't lie to a journalist. You can tell her you were mistaken about the pay structure. That you didn't understand the apprenticeship program properly. Uncle Mike nodded frantically. Right. Apprenticeship wages are different from regular wages. Completely legal loophole. I watched my family scramble to construct a new lie in real time, and something inside me finally snapped. No. The room went dead silent. No. Dad's voice cracked on the word. I'm not going down there to help you lie your way out of this. I stood up, leaving the unsigned partnership papers on the coffee table. I'm done being part of this cover-up. Grandma cleared her throat from the couch. Good for you, David. Everyone turned to stare at her in shock. Martha, what are you saying? Grandpa Joe demanded. I'm saying maybe it's time someone in this family told the truth for once. She struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on her cane. Joe, I've watched you cut corners for 40 years. I've listened to you complain about government regulations and worker complaints and all the freeloaders who want fair wages. I thought David's situation might be different, but clearly I was wrong. You don't understand the business pressures. I understand right from wrong. Grandma's voice carried a strength I'd rarely heard from her. And paying your own grandson $4 an hour while bragging about your generosity? That's wrong, Joe. Plain and simple. My phone buzzed with a group text to all the cousins from Derek. Emergency, do not talk to the reporter until we figure out what's going on. Some of the older family members are furious. Uncle Robert called Grandpa Joe a liar to his face. Then another message, just to me, David, people are asking where you are. The reporter specifically wants to interview you. What should I tell them? Uncle Mike read over my shoulder. You're not talking to any reporter. We're going down there as a family to present a united front. United around what? Another lie. United around protecting what 3 generations of Hoffmans have built. His face was red with frustration. David, there are 12 people who depend on this company for their livelihoods. If Dad gets hit with federal fines or loses his contractor's license because you couldn't keep your mouth shut, those 12 people deserve to know they're working for someone who breaks labor laws. Those 12 people deserve to keep their jobs. The argument was spiraling into chaos when my phone rang with an unknown local number. Without thinking, I answered it. Is this David Hoffman? A professional female voice. Yes. This is Rebecca Martinez from the Herald. I'm at your family reunion and I'd like to ask you a few questions about your employment with Hoffman Construction. 8 pairs of eyes watched me hold the phone, everyone frozen in anticipation of my response. In the background, I could hear the distant sounds of the reunion, kids playing, someone's music, the normal sounds of a family gathering that had become anything but normal. My voice caught. I'm not at the reunion yet. Would you be willing to meet with me privately before you join your family? I understand this might be a difficult situation. Grandpa Joe was shaking his head violently, drawing his finger across his throat in a cut-it-off gesture. Ms. Martinez, can I call you back in a few minutes? Of course. But David? I want you to know that whatever you decide to tell me, I'm going to write this story. The public records speak for themselves. She hung up, leaving me holding a silent phone while my family stared at me like I was holding a loaded weapon. Which, in a way, I was. The silence in Grandpa Joe's living room stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Everyone was staring at my phone like it might explode. Who else did you tell? Uncle Mike's voice was dangerously quiet. Besides your roommate. Who else knows about this? I tried to think back through the past 2 weeks. Just Matt, and I guess his girlfriend Sarah works for the Herald. Aunt Linda finished, her face pale. Sarah Chen. I know her from the Chamber of Commerce events. She's been trying to break into investigative reporting for months. My phone buzzed again. Derek, David, where are you? Reporter lady is setting up interviews with people. Grandma Helen told her she always thought something seemed off about your job situation. Another buzz from my cousin Amy. This is insane. Half the family is defending Grandpa and the other half is asking why nobody questioned paying you $4 per hour. Uncle Paul and Dad almost got in a fistfight. The family reunion was tearing itself apart in real time, and I wasn't even there yet. We need to control the narrative, Dad said, his business training kicking in. David, you call that reporter back and tell her you'll give her an exclusive interview, but only after the reunion. Buy us time to figure this out. Figure what out? How to make illegal wages sound reasonable. How to protect 12 families who depend on this business. Uncle Mike exploded. David, do you think the Department of Labor gives a damn about nuance? One investigation, one audit, and Dad could lose his license. Then what happens to Marcus? What happens to the other guys who just started? What happens to all the workers he's been cheating for 5 years? Grandpa Joe finally spoke up, his voice hollow. You want to know what happens to them? They get their back wages from my personal savings. Every penny. But the business dies, and they all lose their jobs permanently. I stared at him. You'd actually pay them what you owe. I'd pay them what the government says I owe them, yes. But it'll bankrupt me personally and kill the company. He sank back into his recliner, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Congratulations, David. You've accomplished something no competitor ever could. My phone rang again. The unknown number. Answer it, Grandma said firmly. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what this reporter actually knows. I looked around the room one more time, then accepted the call and hit speaker. Ms. Martinez? David, thank you for calling back. I'm sitting in my car outside Hoffman Park, and I have to tell you, your family is having quite a discussion about your employment situation. Through the phone, we could hear distant shouting in the background. What exactly do you want to know? I asked. I have documentation showing that Hoffman Construction has paid multiple wage violation settlements over the past 5 years. I also have family members here telling me you've been working construction for $4 an hour. I'd like your side of the story. Uncle Mike was making frantic, hang-up gestures, but I found myself speaking anyway. How much time do you have? As much as you need. This sounds like a story worth telling properly. Grandpa Joe stood up abruptly. That's enough. We're going to the reunion to handle this as a family. David, hang up that phone right now. Or what? You'll cut my pay to $2 an hour? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Outside, I could hear car doors slamming as more family members presumably left the reunion early, the celebration dissolving into chaos. Ms. Martinez's voice came through the speaker. David? Are you still there? I looked at the unsigned partnership papers on the coffee table, then at my family's faces, then at my phone. Yeah, I'm here. And I think it's time someone told the whole truth. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Through the phone speaker, I could hear Ms. Martinez typing, probably recording our conversation. Behind her, the distant sounds of my family reunion continued to deteriorate, raised voices, car doors slamming, what sounded like someone crying. David, don't you dare, Uncle Mike lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. Ms. Martinez, I need to ask you something first. What exactly are you planning to write? An investigative piece about wage violations in local construction companies. Your grandfather's business came to my attention through public records, but the family angle makes this much more compelling. Grandpa Joe was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, not anger, but something closer to betrayal. 40 years, he said quietly. 40 years building this business, this family legacy, and you're going to destroy it for a newspaper headline. I'm not destroying anything. I'm telling the truth. The truth? His voice rose again. The truth is that I've employed dozens of people over the years. The truth is that I've never had a single worker injured on my sites. The truth is that I was planning to hand you 20% of everything I've built. Through the phone, Ms. Martinez's voice cut in, Mr. Hoffman. This is Rebecca Martinez from the Herald. Since you're there, would you like to comment on the wage violation settlements your company has paid? The room erupted. Uncle Mike started cursing under his breath. Aunt Linda actually gasped. Dad looked like he was going to be sick. How much does she know? Mom whispered. Grandpa Joe moved closer to the phone. Ms. Martinez, this is a private family conversation that you're intruding on illegally. Actually, David called me back voluntarily and put me on speaker. I'm not recording without consent, and everything I'm hearing aligns with public records already available through the Department of Labor. My phone buzzed with another text from Derek. Holy shit, David, and Carol just told everyone about your pay stubs. People are losing it. Where are you? Then Amy, Uncle Robert's wife, is making a list of everyone who knew and didn't say anything. She's crying and saying she feels like an accessory to child abuse. Child abuse. The words hit me like a physical blow. Is that what this was? I'd been so focused on the unfairness and the lies that I hadn't considered the legal implications for my family members who knew and stayed silent. Ms. Martinez, I said carefully, if I talk to you, what happens to my family members who didn't know the full situation? I'm interested in the business practices, not in prosecuting family members who were kept in the dark. But David, I should tell you, the Department of Labor takes these violations very seriously. There could be federal investigations regardless of what you tell me. Uncle Mike's face went white. Federal investigations. The pattern of settlements suggests systematic violations. That typically triggers automatic reviews. Grandpa Joe sank back into his chair, looking defeated for the first time in my life. It's over anyway, he muttered. Even if David stays quiet now, too many people know. The family's talking, the story's out there. My phone rang again, this time it was Derek calling, probably from the reunion. Don't answer that, Aunt Linda said quickly. David, think about what you're about to do. Once you talk to this reporter, there's no taking it back. No matter what happens with the business or the investigations or anything else, you'll always be the grandson who destroyed his grandfather. The weight of that statement settled over me like a shroud. Was that really what I was about to become? The family traitor who chose principles over loyalty? But what's the alternative? I asked. Lie to protect someone who's been breaking federal law for years. Protect the family that raised you, Dad said quietly. Protect the people who love you, even when they make mistakes. Through the phone speaker, Ms. Martinez cleared her throat. I'm going to need a decision soon, David. I have a deadline to meet, and this story is running tomorrow either way. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of 3 generations of family expectations pressing down on me. Tomorrow, one way or another, everything would change forever. I opened my eyes and looked around the room one final time, at my parents who taught me to stand up for what's right until it became inconvenient, at Uncle Mike who just admitted that breaking federal law was standard business practice, at Grandpa Joe who'd spent 2 years exploiting me while bragging about his generosity to anyone who'd listen. Ms. Martinez, I said into the phone, my voice steadier than I felt, I'll tell you everything. But I want to do it properly, in person. Can you meet me at the reunion? The eruption was immediate. Uncle Mike started shouting about lawsuits. Mom burst into tears. Dad launched into a desperate speech about family loyalty. But through it all, I heard something unexpected, Grandma's voice, calm and clear. I'm proud of you, David. I hung up on Ms. Martinez and grabbed my car keys. I'm going to the reunion. David, wait, Grandpa Joe stood up, his voice different now. Smaller. The partnership offer still stands. Even after all this. 20% ownership, your name on everything. We can work through the wage issues, make it right going forward. I paused at the door. Grandpa, do you really think you can buy my silence with money you made by cheating people? I think I can give my grandson the future he deserves. The future I deserve is one where I don't have to lie about who I am or what I've experienced. I opened the door. See you at the reunion. The drive to Hoffman Park took 8 minutes that felt like 8 hours. I could see the chaos before I even parked, family members clustered in heated discussions, kids running around confused, someone's grandmother crying on a picnic table bench. Derek spotted me first. David. Dude, where have you been? This is insane. Half the family thinks you're a hero and the other half thinks you're trying to destroy Grandpa. Ms. Martinez appeared beside my car almost immediately, a professional-looking woman in her 30s with a digital recorder and a notebook. David? I'm Rebecca. Thank you for agreeing to talk. The interview took 45 minutes. I told her everything, the pay stubs, the false promises, the years of being told I was ungrateful while making $4 an hour for construction work. She asked thoughtful questions, took careful notes, and never once tried to sensationalize what was already a dramatic enough story. While we talked, I watched my family reunion essentially divide itself in half. The older generation largely rallied around Grandpa Joe, who'd arrived and immediately launched into damage control mode. But the younger family members, my cousins, the newer spouses, anyone who'd ever worked a minimum wage job, were asking harder questions. David, cousin Amy said after the interview ended, I'm sorry we all just accepted that story about your apprenticeship. $4 an hour is crazy, and we should have said something. Uncle Robert's wife approached me with tears in her eyes. I feel horrible about all those jokes I made about how lucky you were. I had no idea. But the moment that mattered most came when Grandpa Joe himself walked over, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. David, I need you to know, the partnership offer wasn't a bribe. I genuinely wanted to bring you into the business properly. At 20% of a company built on wage theft. He winced at the phrase. I can make the back wages right. All of them, not just yours. It'll cost me everything I've saved, but I can make it right. That's a start, I said. But Grandpa, the partnership papers are still sitting on your coffee table. Maybe offer them to someone who you've actually treated like a partner. 6 months later, the Department of Labor investigation concluded with Hoffman Construction paying $847,000 in back wages and penalties. Grandpa Joe sold his house to cover the costs but kept the business running. He now pays all employees above market rate and has become something of a cautionary tale in local construction circles. The family eventually healed, mostly. Some relationships never fully recovered, but most people came to understand that exposing wrongdoing isn't the same as causing it. And me? I'm majoring in labor law now, with a full academic scholarship funded by the settlement money I received. Turns out standing up for yourself can be its own reward. Sometimes the right choice and the easy choice are completely different things. But I learned that summer that I can live with being right a lot easier than I could live with being complicit. The Hoffman family reunion still happens every year. These days, they're a lot more honest about what goes on behind closed doors.